I need you to help me. I just need to get a feel for the room. If you would find somebody next to you or somebody you know, respond, and if you'll ask them, do you know the difference? Between spending the night and a sleepover. Just so we got a good survey, just so we're all, if you could find one more person and just ask a mother flag, do you know the difference between spending the night and the sleepover? As a kid, I realized that there was a major difference between spending the night at someone's house and going to a sleepover. Spending the night didn't necessarily mean that you got to stay up late. It didn't mean that there were going to be all types of fruit. Usually if you spent the night over somebody's houses because your mama and daddy wanted some time away from you, and so they found somebody who was going to be willing to watch your bad behind while they got their mind together. Or maybe you had somewhere that you had to go, and it was more advantageous that you slept over a friend's house, but you didn't get to stay up late. You didn't get to enjoy any of the sundries of a sleepover or a slumber party. There was no excitement. There really wasn't even anything exciting, except maybe you got a few more hours to hang out with your cousin or your friend. But spending the night at somebody's house usually was just business as usual. The next morning you still had to go to school. You still had to go to church. It wasn't a weekend or anything like that. There was no pizza or video games or anything like that. When you went to spend the night at somebody's house, you didn't even get to take no play clothes. You got your little bitty bag with your toiletries and the clothes that you had to wear to school or to church or wherever you had to go the next day. Spending the night at somebody's house was not much of an event or occasion. But when you went to a sleepover, see, while spending the night might have just been you and a cousin, a sleepover, you knew that all of your best friends and your closest family members would be invited. You knew that if you got invited to a sleepover or a slumber party, that you were looking for a good time, that your closest people would be there, that there would be a special meal of tacos or pizza and popcorn, and the popcorn would have Reese's Pieces inside of it. You knew that you were going to get to see a movie and play some video games. You knew that you could stay up for as long as you wanted and as late as you wanted. You knew that you would just move around and have a good time, and that you could stay up so long that the next morning.
That's why. There's a difference.
You would share secrets and intimate stories with your friends from the things that have been going on in your life. You tell each other all types of scary stories or adventurous stories. You would share all of these deep insights about your life and your thinking. You talk about the little girl or little boy that you like. You talk about what you're going to do on your sports team. But there's all of this intimate sharing going on at the sleepover. But contrary to the name, at a sleepover, there's not much sleeping. As a matter of fact, at a sleepover, if you find yourself asleep, you might find yourself in trouble. Especially if you're the first one at a sleepover to go to sleep. You might wake up with some obscenities written on your face. You might end up with a handful of shaving cream on your face because somebody's been playing jokes on you. If you fall asleep at a sleepover, you might find yourself in a compromising situation. In this morning's text, 2 days before Passover and the night that he is betrayed, Jesus invites his disciples to a sleepover. He prepares an amazing meal. He welcomes them to the upper room where they can come and fellowship and have a good time. He shares intimate stories and secrets. They all are talking with one another. It's a delicious meal. He even washes their feet. They have a good time sharing and talking and fellowshipping with each other. There's some laughter. There's some crying. It gets a little bit sticky because some of the things that Jesus shares. And then he welcomes them to go with him to the garden. And at the garden, he encourages them to stay awake with him for a while. Again, Jesus was not inviting them to come and spend the night for business as usual, but this was a rare occasion and a fine occasion where Jesus needed them to come for a sleepover, a slumber party, an event that was not business as usual. That was not just the same old thing, that the next day they weren't just going back to their regular life, but he needed them to come over. And while it was late at night, he did not need them to focus on the sleep, but on the over. But for some reason, the disciples can't stay awake. And much like at any other sleepover, Jesus reminds his disciples that you've got to stay awake, watch, and pray so that you can stand against the temptation of the devil. I hope somebody understands this morning that when they fell asleep, that they made themselves susceptible to the attacks of the devil, that when they fell asleep, that they were no longer watching for what the Lord was about to do. They were no longer watching and on defense for what the enemy was plotting and planning. Maybe if Peter had stayed awake, he wouldn't have found himself denying Jesus. Maybe if the sons of Zebedee had stayed awake, maybe if the church could just stay awake, the enemy wouldn't be running rampant in our homes, in our churches, in the world, in our families. Jesus asked his disciples to stay awake, watch, and pray. But every time he came back, there they were, slobbering, drooling, snoring, nodding. And as I was reading this text, I asked myself, why couldn't they stay awake? And as I began to think over and read over and re-examine what had happened that night, it hit me, maybe they had the itis. Maybe the meal of the Last Supper was so delicious and so filling. Y'all know what the itis is. When you've had a meal that's so good that it just... Maybe they had gotten so full of God's blessings and God's goodness that they no longer had a desire to be of service to anybody else. They no longer wanted to tell anybody else about the goodness of Jesus because they got their fill. This morning, I wonder if some church folks have spiritual itis, that God has been good to me and God has done all that I need and God helped me. And so instead of going and helping somebody else, instead of going and serving somebody else, I'm just going... He said maybe they had the itis, maybe because they were so full of God's blessings and so full of God's goodness and so full of all that God had done that they didn't have the energy to watch and pray and be on the lookout, that they didn't have the energy to stand up for those who were voiceless, to show up for those who had no help. Maybe they had the itis, and so they did not show up for the poor. They did not show up for the homeless. They could not show up for the man who was unjustly executed, that maybe because the church was asleep with the itis, that we could not keep up watch and pray. I couldn't figure it out, Brother Orr. I was trying to figure out why couldn't they stay awake? And then I said, well, maybe they were tired. You know, it was a full day. Jesus had laid some pretty heavy stuff on them. Maybe, maybe it was a little late at night, and after all of that, they just needed a little nap, a little shut-eye. Sometimes I think maybe the church is just tired. Maybe we feel like we've done all we can do. Maybe because we've been serving for generations and generations, we no longer feel like we need to stay awake. Maybe we just feel like we need a little nap, and the world can go to hell in a handbasket because we're tired. The song used to say, I've been running for Jesus, but I'm not tired yet. But maybe there are some tired saints who just need to take a little nap, and so while we're napping, the devil is running rampant in our families. Devil is running rampant with our children. Devil is running rampant with drug abuse and depression. The devil is running rampant while we might be tired and taking a break. The devil is running rampant in the pulpit. Devil is running rampant in the pew. Devil is running rampant in the choir stand while we're taking a nap because we're tired. That the devil is having his way with our people. The devil is having his way in the justice system. The devil is having his way in the halls of policy. The devil is having his way in the White House. The devil is having his way in the mayor's office because the church is sleeping.